Well, MJ, welcome to the Feminine Frequency. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you.
Me too, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And before we hit record, you just shared something that brought tears to my eyes and brought so much joy to me. So, sounds like you have listened to the Feminine Frequency before and that it's been a supportive part of your healing journey. So, for our listeners to hear a little bit more about that, I'd love to hear like your journey with connecting with your feminine energy and how that supported you.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it succinct because I feel anyone listening, connecting with the feminine energy, you end up going down so many rabbit holes and before you know it, you're reading about Mary Magdalene and you're like, oh my gosh, all this stuff's been suppressed. So I've totally gone on that journey, but I had some health issues. I didn't have a cycle for about 7 or 8 years and was totally brushed off by doctors, offered birth control, all the stuff that isn't even that helpful. My doctor didn't want to do a scan on my pituitary, claimed that I was too stressed out and too skinny. So I gained 40 pounds. And after a year of gaining 40 pounds, I went back in and I was like, okay, now are you willing to? Obviously, the scan didn't find anything because a lot of it was energetic. So then I went on this whole journey to tap into that feminine energy, into my womb space, and figure out, okay, what is it like? And I had immense amount of trauma, wild family stories, lots of sexual abuse when I was younger, just a lot of generational stuff, and then family stuff. And I think my body just was holding on to so much trauma. And it was when I was able to put down all my wounded masculine walls, put down all my wounded masculine swords, and really be held by earth and be held by God and be safe here and go into that really helped heal me. And this podcast was such a huge journey for me because it was the first time I'd ever been around women having these conversations.
Mm.
And I started following everybody that you were talking to. For some reason, I wasn't following you, which was doy, but I started following so many people that were on your podcast, and it really was a big awakening for me. And then I returned back to your podcast after I had kids, because anyone who's had kids, you can very easily slip into your masculine again because kids are so feminine, polarizing. And
Mm.
yeah, it's been such an amazing energetic journey for me. So thank you, Amy. Your podcast has been a big role for me in my healing journey.
Thank you so much for sharing about your story. And I know that so many women can relate to that of whether it's being disconnected from their body or being out of balance with their masculine and feminine energy. And to know that listening to this podcast and hearing some of the guests really helped you to see what's possible and to know that there is another way of living. And so today, now we get to have you on, which feels full circle since this podcast has
Mm-hmm.
supported you on your journey. So special to talk about the ways in which you have used your life path to now be in service to support other women in healing their own trauma. And you do that through a very somatic approach, which is something that I really value and I believe is really the future of healing. And it's something that's been needed for so long and that is a missing piece for so many women on their healing journey. So not just women, I would say men too. We do so much cognitive work of therapy and looking at our thoughts and all of that, which is powerful. However, when we're really looking at trauma, we're looking at really healing deeper layers in the nervous system. So let's share. I'd love for you to share some insights around your breathwork journey, since that's the primary modality that you teach. And when did you first find breathwork, and how has it supported you on your healing journey?
Yeah, I think um, I agree with everything that you said about the future of healing and, the body being kind of this forgotten piece. Descartes, I think, therefore I am. We all of a sudden separated our mind from our body, and we're thinking, our mind is this magnificent thing, but our body's just a machine. And it's not. It's alive and it has intelligence. And we have our enteric nervous system, and we've got, our body holds on to trauma at the cellular level. We know that now. And if you ignore it, you're ignoring a big part of your healing. And I think the journey back into your body is a universal one. I think all of us, from whatever age, whether it's in the womb or generational before that or as a child, there's a moment a lot of people can think back to where they separated. Like you finally realized you were separate from God, you were separate from earth, you're separate from your mother. And it creates like a God-sized hole, right? And we get to fill that with whatever we want. And you can fill it with something that can distract you from the actual healing of your trauma. And that can look like scrolling or drugs or alcohol or shopping or the material world stuffy stuff, which is fine. Or you can fill it with, the good stuff, like the spiritual journey going inward and filling it with connectedness to others, to community, to God. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I really agree with you. I think I started doing breath work when I was a kid. I remember doing breath holds as a kid and I would count. And it was one of the things I used to calm myself down at night and get myself to sleep. And I think children do this all the time. They're very, very, very intuitive. I think if you watch kids, a lot of them are doing breath work already. Like you watch a kid when they're frustrated and look at the way they're breathing. They're self-regulating, right? So that was like my journey to breath work, thinking back to it. But I got certified it would have been 2013. And it was after my dad committed suicide. I, went to California, did my yoga teacher training, did my breathwork training, and I just needed time to just sit with that stuff, all that stuffy. And I never did anything with it. I ended up coming back to Canada and going to a postgrad to do osteopathy. Very fascinating program. I loved the science that I learned there. So much anatomy and physiology. I could cry. I did cry. But when I started working as an osteopath, I didn't feel connected to spirit as I used to. And there was a missing piece. And, anyone entering into any sort of medical or health field, even if it's holistic, you're a part of a board and there are things that you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. And I ended up dropping out. And that's when I was like, I've always wanted to do something with breathwork, so I'm going to do it. And that's when the Being Method started. And it's been a long journey.
Yeah, and it takes so much courage to leave something that you've put so much energy into and time, and to really say, actually, this isn't enlivening for me. This isn't soul nourishing for me. It's not the highest alignment of what I'm meant to be doing. And so to have the courage to say, I'm actually going to listen to that intuitive piece versus the logical piece, which is like, I've started this program, I should probably finish it. This is the path that I chose. Like your soul was just like, hell no. That's not
yeah. My body was railing against it. It was so wild. Like my car would break down all the time going to school. I would get flat tires. My body would get like sick going to school. Like it was so, and it's funny because I knew, like I was like in my car being like, oh my gosh, like everything is telling me not to do this. But you're all the things you mentioned, like I've done so far, I poured so much money into this. It's such a good program. I'm going to have a good job coming out. Like I'm going to have that prestige. And then I don't think you could have paid me to finish it. Like at the end, I was just like, I cannot do this. Like I have to have the freedom. I felt like I was like on this tunnel of life where I was going to wake up and be 65 and be like, oh, oops, like I never did the thing. So you may as well do it now. So if you're listening, do the thing.
I so feel that. I think the more attuned that I've become to my body and the more that I've listened to it and understand its signals, it's become this thing where it's impossible to ignore it. Like the signs are so loud for me when something is out of alignment, and that could be anything. That could
and
be
the cost.
totally. Yeah. And that could be anything. It could be a friendship dynamic where there's something that's feeling off and I have to have a conversation because it's not feeling good, or it could be a part of my business, something that I'm offering that no longer feels aligned, or that it needs to evolve in some way or needs to be let go. And yeah, I think that the more attuned we become, the sooner that we let those things go to then create the space for what does feel more true for us. And it sounds like for you that that was a big turning point for you in your career, and listening to that inner knowing.
Mm-hmm. And no one else can know but you. Like my mom and I are very close, and I had actually already dropped out of 2 other programs, a
Mm-hmm.
bachelor's and then a college program afterwards. And then this was my 3rd program. And my mom was shocked because I loved it so much. I loved osteopathy. And she looked at me and she said, "This is your pattern. You're scared. You're scared and you're going to run." And I sat with that for so long, being like, is this my pattern? Or is this just not what I want to do? And I had to sit with that for a really long time. That was like, so, and I came out of it being like, no, that's not my pattern. I'm just not someone that's going to go through with something when I know it's not right for me. So there's like a lot of honor in quitting something.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's all this messaging, like you have to finish what you started. And in some cases, yes, but in some cases, no, like you can just quit.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
We have a finite time in this body. Like have fun while you're here. It's okay to seek pleasure. Like I had a friend who's an artist look at me and she said, what if the path that you're supposed to choose is just the one that seems more fun? And I was like, oh my God, I'm dropping out tomorrow. I'm dropping out tomorrow, girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. I love that faith that you had and that knowing. And maybe your pattern was like noticing when things were out of alignment and learning how to trust your intuition. And it doesn't, according to the Western world, there's so much emphasis on this doing things a logical way, and we're seen kind of as crazy or flaky or ungrounded if
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
do things
Mm-hmm.
differently. And ultimately what I teach here and in my book and in my coaching is that it's not only about following your intuition and then throwing out all the logic. It's not only about being in your feminine and then ignoring having some groundedness and structure. It's about finding your own balance between both. But what I'm hearing is like this piece of, oh, I didn't let the fear, or I didn't let other people's perceptions or projections dictate my decisions. I really led with my heart. I led with my intuition and allowed that to guide me to this path that I'm on today. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you started the being method, and I love the name of it. I want to just start there because so
Thank
many people
you.
have a hard time with being. I literally had a client session today where she was like, I have a really hard time sitting still. I can't sit
Mm-hmm.
still. I always have to be doing something. And I'd love for you to just speak of the origin of that name and around even the methods that you teach.
Yeah. The name arose from the same issue that I have. Like, I think society today does not value being. It is something that you have to relearn.
Hmm.
Um, Kids know how to be, but it is something that you have to relearn. There's a lot of unlearning of conditioning that goes on with that. And a lot of like family dynamics and trauma that can all play into why we're not comfortable just being in the present moment. But that is where the magic of life is. That's the place that feels the best. Like if you want to feel the best, get into the present moment. It's the best place. Better than the Maldives. um, And our method, I mean, it's ever evolving as I evolve, and I'm, forever a student and constantly learning. But we try to make our breath work as kind of balanced in the feminine and masculine as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's been a big path for me and myself. Anyone who's ever explored breathwork, you know that it's a male dominated industry. And they're amazing, right? Like Wim Hof, amazing. Soma breathwork, amazing. Stanley Groff, amazing. Such good medicine coming out of there. But I looked around because I was wanting to do more breath work, and I was like, literally all of these are men. And it's all a very similar style where it's like, keep going until you finish. You got to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And in participating in that, I noticed something that was, very in line with what always happens in society, where it's like, don't listen to your body. Listen to me. I know what you need to do. You need to finish. You can't quit. It's not about getting into your body. It's about finishing the thing that I'm telling you to finish. And I found that energy, I think, can be medicine. And sometimes, like, there's definitely been times where I have had to listen to someone else and finish something and be like, wow, I'm a long distance runner. I do that all the time. But there's been immense amount of medicine for me in like getting into my body and being like, what do I need right now? Do I need a 2-hour long hyperventilation session? No. I need to just lay here and be with my body. And then sometimes I do need that. So ours is very much, I mean, I know the term trauma informed is really thrown around, but it is very trauma informed in that like we work with our people to be like, what medicine is your body needing right now? Like, how do you feel? So we are also very unique in that we do certify people to teach every single technique that's out there, because we're anatomy and physiology based.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be like you come out being like, oh, square breath. We're going to do square breath now. It's like you're going to learn the entire respiratory system, whether you like it or not. Some people see that as good. Some people are like, oh, MJ, stop teaching me this. But yeah, so we do hypoxia training, apnea training with our breath holds. We do parasympathetic training, which is more like slow breathing, getting into the parasympathetic state. We do sympathetic training where you're doing that more hyperventilation style and kind of arousing yourself. Very, very good for releasing trauma and emotions stored in the body. And I love them all. I see value in them all. So I'm very proud of the Being Method in that I can say that we are one of the only breathwork certification courses where we teach all of them and value all of them. I think in the niche breathwork world, there's a lot of like, that breathwork's bad, that one's wrong. I don't participate in that. I think that there is, medicine for everybody everywhere, and every body is different. So it's according to what feels good for one person and what they feel like they need.
Yeah, I love this approach. I'm loving all the different pieces of it and of the recognizing that some versions of breathwork are actually more masculine and they're more even arousal sympathetic, and some are more feminine and they're more parasympathetic. And the way that you know which style of breathwork that you need is by tuning in and listening to your body and learning how to do that, which so many people don't know how to do. And it's like, there we know there's so much research on you have to feel it to heal it. And yet so many people are still analyzing their emotions. They're still trying to decode their thoughts and not actually feeling the sensations. And so I'm curious for you, because you shared in the beginning, like you've had a lot of childhood trauma and you had a challenging upbringing, and with that, there is a lot of stored emotion in the body, and it can be scary to actually look at that and be with that. So for someone who may be in your shoes or who have had a similar history, how would you approach breath work? What would be a way to like invite them into breath work that's actually supportive for them and helping them instead of maybe keeping them in like a hyper state of arousal?
That's a very good question. And I'm going to say an annoying answer where it's like, it just depends. We've got a free breathwork on our podcast. It's called the Emotional Clearing Breathwork. It is sympathetic, but we do like very chill version. You're not going to do it for 2 hours. And it works really well. Like it gets that arousal, gets you to a space where you're like releasing whatever is in you, but not to a place where you're I think to a place where you're at, an immense amount of dysregulation where it's going to take days to kind of come back down into your body.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know what? I think you just have to try.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone's listening, you just have to try it. And if you're like, I hated that, then like, that's not the medicine for you right now. There's tons of somatic practices. I love them all. Breathwork is something that really works for me and really has like transformed my life, but I'm not so fundamentalist in that I think it's going to work for everybody and heal everybody. It is an ancient technology we've been using for a long time. So the rate of who it's going to work for is high. It's good, right? Like we've been doing this medicine for a long time, but there are people where it's not going to be their jam, and that's okay. I think, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I think.
Yeah. How has breath work changed your life? What do you feel has been like the biggest impact or benefit of breath work for you?
Releasing trauma for me, for sure. I think I went the way where maybe someone who's listening can relate to this, where I shut down. Like I was so shut down and removed from my body and from my personhood and from my emotions that I was like, I don't even know who I was. Like I was just walking around like I didn't know what was going on. I started getting all these chronic illness stuff. I was in relationships that were unaligned. I was, in school programs to be in a career that was unaligned. Like no part of my life was me. And, it took a long time for me to realize what was going on. But once I started the practice of actually getting into my body, using breathwork to get into my body to create a release so that I could actually feel, my father's loss, so that I could feel, I lost my brother too, feel my brother's loss. I also lost my best friend, like feel my best friend's loss, like all these things that I just like totally dissociated away from the world. And get in there and feel it. I just want to say to anyone who's going through losses or grief or anything that's happened to you, there is a diamond that you find in those horrible feelings, like that grief and that suffering and that sadness and that anger and that frustration that you go through when you're healing. There is a diamond that you find, and it's like an immense amount of love. I remember the first time I was really like on the bathroom floor, like crying about my brother. And I kept being like, what is this feeling that I'm feeling? Like I'm feeling the sadness, but it feels good. It feels like really good. And I was like, oh, that's the love. That's the love for him. I wasn't letting myself feel because I was putting up so many walls to my grief. And that's the thing about feelings is like you can block out the bad ones or the ones you think are bad, the ones you don't want to feel, but you're going to block out all the good feeling ones too. Like if you want to live a life, you're going to have to feel everything. And the thing that I've learned is that is some good shit. Pardon my French. Like feeling everything is so good. I never want to go back to not feeling everything. Like I want to feel it all. So if someone's sitting there and they're like, wow, I feel like that's me. I haven't been in touch with my body. I've just been like walking around ignoring it, or I haven't been really like processing the things. I just want to let you know, like it is a treasure chest when you go into that shadow work and you start finding, because you think you're just going to find yucky stuff, and you are, but you're also going to find a lot of good buried in there and a lot of freedom. And it's such a good journey.
It's so good. And this is one of my favorite conversations, especially as someone who struggled with chronic depression for over a decade and, was on antidepressants for much of that time. And I had tons of anxiety and I just didn't know how to process it. And I was very highly emotional and highly sensitive. And I have been since I was a little girl, and just never really knew how to honor my emotions or to be with my emotions. And something that I want to offer to our listeners is that a lot of times what can block us from actually feeling the guilt, the shame, the sadness, all of that is that there's judgment around those feelings. There's inner judgment or like fear of what other people are going to think, fear of being too much, being too sensitive, being weak, being too vulnerable. And when we have inner judgment, which for me was like, oh, why do I have such deep, intense feelings? Like I have some Scorpio in my chart. I'm a Scorpio rising, and
Same girl,
yeah,
same.
and I used to see that as like, oh, like there's something wrong with me that I have these deep, heavy emotions, and by resisting that and judging that, it didn't serve me, and it was me abandoning the parts of myself that are really deep and sensitive and emotional. And as I started to bring this acceptance and create space for those emotions and welcome them, like bringing unconditional love and compassion to the parts of myself that did feel really sad or that felt disappointed. Like disappointment is such a huge one that I still deal with in my life a lot in relationships, mostly relationships with women as it comes up for me. But it was like, as I started to let myself really feel those emotions and take away the shame and the judgment of like, I shouldn't feel this way, or I should be over this by now. That's a huge one I hear all of the time from my clients. Why am I X years old and I still have sadness from my childhood? It's like, well, welcome to being human. There are layers. Like these emotions are here for a reason. And one of the things that I love about attuning to your emotions is that if we allow them to be like, our emotions are guides, they're messengers, they're teachers, they're showing us what's out of alignment. They're showing us when we have deep love for someone or something that has been lost. Like they're here to guide us. And I think there's just a reorientation, like an unlearning of all the narratives that we have around that emotions are bad and that we shouldn't feel them, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think that our bodies are designed by God wrong. Right? If people are going to walk around and say like, these emotions are bad, we shouldn't feel them. You're saying that nature and God is wrong and how we are built. No, they're there for a reason, and they're very powerful, and they're there to show us like the way of healing. And it's good, it's good to honor our emotions. It's good to feel them and then move on. Right. And it's such an interesting conversation. I think I always say like, there's no bad or good emotions. There's just emotions on a different vibration. And some of them have a faster vibration, lots of energy. You go to joy, love, excitement. There's going to be a lot of energy there. You go to something like guilt, grief, sadness, they're slower. And that's meant for you to slow down and go inwards, right? And feel them. It's all designed perfectly. And all we have to do is just get our own heads out of the way.
Yeah. And I'm curious, in your experience, going from someone who was like, in your protection from the trauma that you've been through was through numbing or avoiding, like not feeling. And when you did start to feel and you did start to access these emotions through breath work, what was that like for you? Was it overwhelming? Was it scary? I know you said like you wouldn't do it any other way. Like this is you're happy that you're feeling it. Yeah. What was that experience like for you to start feeling again?
It felt really good. I mean, all of these uncomfortable emotions, yes, they're uncomfortable to feel. I can hear my son in the background. So if anybody's listening, you can probably hear my son upset about something downstairs, but he's showing his emotions, and like, and this is, a lot of us, I think a lot of people listening, I always like to use the example of like, how were you parented? In my household, my parents, they just did the best that they could. But if you were having a tantrum, like my son is downstairs, you were sent to your room, right? You were told like, this is unacceptable. You cannot be showing these emotions. Go away. And for a kid, that's like, okay, so I'm learning if I'm showing my emotions, I'm rejected by my sense of where I get my food, my safety, my love. It's a lot of unlearning for people. And like now I'm married with my husband, and my husband's down there sitting there next to him saying, it's okay, let it out, like cry. And like, what is that going to do for men? You know what I mean? Like I experienced a dad who killed, like, he committed suicide. He struggled with mental illness and he didn't reach out to anybody because that would have been seen as weak. Right? So this work, it's not to be taken lightly. There are many lives that depend on conversations like this. And that's like what I always come back to in my business. I run a business, right? And that's my why. My why, I'm so motivated to help people understand that going deeper into your emotions, feeling them, not only do we have the research that shows that that's going to save your life, like all-cause mortality, emotional stagnation and emotional suppression can lead to an immense amount of things. Like we're talking heart attacks, strokes, cancer, autoimmune. We have all the studies now. But we're also talking your community, right? What is it going to be like to be a person who's more emotionally regulated? How are you going to be able to change the world? And it's an ongoing process, and I'm not perfect. We're all learning it. But I really believe that just feeling your emotions and being able to go into your body, let them go, there is like magic. There's magic there. And it's almost hilarious how hard it is because it's so simple, but it is hard. We've been deeply conditioned that it's bad, and it's a revolution now.
Yeah, the impact that this has, like you said, not only for women but for men, for children, like for us, like us doing this work, it also gives other people permission to know, like, it is safe to feel, it is safe to be yourself, it is safe to have these life experiences and process them, and to not have to feel shame around them. And that's why community is so important, to have spaces where maybe your family doesn't get it. Maybe your community that you grew up with doesn't get it, but there are people who do, and continuing to put yourself in those spaces and to let yourself be seen and to be held is such a gift to you and to the world, really, to everyone around you. So thank you. When you were sharing your mission, it really, I had chills, and I was like, yes, I'm so on board with this. Like, this is so needed.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I still have all those emotions. Like I'm just a person, I'm putting out a book and I'm scared. I'm scared people are going to be like, this book is BS. This is like not scientific enough, blah, blah, blah. I come from the science community and I have fears, right? But at the end of the day, like what's more important to me, hiding from those people who are just grumbly people who, they're not writing books. They're just the keyboard warriors of the stands. They're not in the arena. Or is it more important to me to like speak the truth that I do know that this is a path of healing and that it can save lives? Mm-hmm. Right? Like I'm like, okay, 100% I'm in that lane. Like yeah. I'd rather be made fun of online and like save a life.
Yeah. So huge. Focusing on who you're serving and really the impact that you're here to make, rather than the fear or the critics that are out there, is so important. And I know that you have your book coming out, and I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that. I know it's going to be so insightful. I'm excited to read it. So yeah, share a little bit more about what you've created with your book.
Thank you. It's my first book. It's called How to Cry. Obviously. It wasn't intended to be about that at all. It was supposed to be about somatic breathwork, and it just turned into this whole thing. And like I shared, I lost my dad to suicide, and that's been very pivotal to me. That comes with a lot of guilt if anyone's lost anyone in their life. And I think this is a way of me trying to time travel. As I was writing it, I was just like, God, if he could just read this book, like he would have maybe reached out. But that's, at the heart of it, that's what it is. The book is just about going through, the emotional revolution, which is just that feeling your emotions is good. We have the science to show that we should be doing this. Emotional intelligence is very important. We should not be stifling children with their emotions. We shouldn't be trying to distract them from their emotions or telling them, no, it's not a parenting book, but it's it touches on that. It goes into somatic practices for emotions that are stored in your body, how you can tell they're stored in your body. yeah, and then it goes through, the different parts of the nervous system, a lot of unlearning. I think a lot of people kind of shy away from the sympathetic nervous system. It's a bad state to be in. It's not. It's good. It's a masculine energy. It's a doing. If you ever want to do anything in life, you're going to need that nervous system to do it, right? It's just understanding that there is a balance that's so, so needed. And yeah, that's the book. I'm very, very excited for it to come out. I don't know when it's going to come out because I'm still waiting on someone to write the foreword, but if you guys follow me on Instagram, I'll probably be yapping about it when it does. But
Yeah, definitely recommend for everyone to follow you on Instagram. Your account is amazing. You offer so much valuable insight and wisdom. So thank you for all of the energy and yeah, just the education that you've been putting out there. It's amazing. So we'll make sure to link your Instagram in the show notes. But for people who want to know what your Instagram handle is and they want to go follow you right now, why don't you let them know?
yeah, it's at Being Method, like human being method, not bean method, which sometimes people type in, which is would be cool too. I love beans, but being method.
Being method. Awesome. Amazing. We'll link that in the show notes. And I know that you have lots of great resources on your website as well for various different types of trainings with breathwork. You have a breathwork membership, I believe. So yeah, why don't you share a little bit more about where people can find out more about breathwork and learning with you?
Yeah, beingmethod.ca because I'm Canadian. But yeah, we've got a whole membership. We've got some, I think it's 3 days for free if you want to go in there, hop in and try it. We've got some free ones on our podcast. So we've got tons of free resources. The membership is great. We've got thousands of people in there and I love it. It's really, I do it. I do my own breath work. We've got coaching. If you want to work with one of our coaches and go a little bit more in depth, we've got like a 6-week coaching journey, which is it's amazing. We've got a specific one for pregnant women. If you're pregnant, it's like a lot of inner child healing, going from, maiden to mother and really exploring the breath, connecting with your baby, doing some birth and labor prep. And then we've got our certification course, which is certifying you to be a breathwork facilitator. Yeah, there's some good juicy stuff there, but yeah, breathwork's amazing. I love it. It's changed my life.
Yay, awesome. Well, I'm going to check out your membership because I'd love to learn with you and to breathe with you and be guided by you. So thank you for creating that resource. And yeah, thanks again for being here. Thank you for your vulnerability today and authenticity and sharing your story. I know that it's going to be really healing for our listeners to hear from you. So thanks again.
Thank you, Amy. It's been an honor.